My husband won't even let me lay a hand on him. Not since I betrayed him. This is a reflection on the consequences of infidelity. My choices, my regrets, and the ripple effects they caused. Let me be upfront. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't want to be touched either. My name is Megan, and I want to share my story, not to seek sympathy, but to offer a cautionary tale about the devastation infidelity can bring. I'm not the victim here, not even close. The real victims are my husband, my children, and even my parents, who've had to bear the burden of my actions. For that, I carry a deep and unshakable regret. 19 months ago, I was caught in an act of betrayal that shattered my life and the lives of everyone I care about. Before that moment, everything seemed perfect. I'm a 32-year-old woman, married to Ryan, my incredible husband who's 39. Together, we're raising two amazing boys, ages 9 and 11. From the outside, it looked like we had it all. A beautiful family, a stable life, and plenty to be thankful for. But beneath that picture-perfect surface, I made a choice I'll regret for the rest of my life. To give you some context, my affair began over 2 years ago, though it wasn't discovered until 19 months ago. The affair lasted almost 5 months, during which I was intimately involved with another man, Brian, our married neighbor. While I want to be as honest as possible, I need to share this. During those 5 months, Brian and I were only physical on 4 separate occasions. I know that may sound hard to believe, but it's the truth. You're probably wondering why this happened. Was my marriage in trouble? Did I stop loving Ryan? The honest answer is no, none of those things were true. I was completely happy in my marriage. Ryan was everything I ever wanted. Kind, loving, and supportive. I adored him and our boys more than anything in this world. My attraction to Brian came from something far deeper and more primitive, something I thought I had buried long ago. It was the pull of a first love, that intoxicating mix of nostalgia and excitement. To explain, I need to take you back to my past. In high school, I dated a few boys, but nothing ever became serious. Then, at 18, I met Jacob, my friend's cousin, at a barbecue. The moment I laid eyes on him, I felt an undeniable pull, like a moth to a flame. We exchanged numbers, and our connection grew quickly. Our first kiss felt magical, and before long, I lost my virginity to him. But despite the passion we shared, it didn't take long for me to realize we were completely incompatible. After 11 months, I ended things with Jacob. A year later, I met Ryan. Unlike with Jacob, there weren't instant fireworks. But over time, I developed a love for him that ran deeper than anything I had ever felt before. Ryan was everything I dreamed of: steady, kind, and reliable. I knew early on that I wanted to spend my life with him. We got married a year later, and for 13 wonderful years, our marriage thrived. Then, I destroyed it with my infidelity. The turning point came when Brian moved into our neighborhood. He and his wife, Ashley, were the youngest couple in the area, and their energy was infectious. Ryan and I invited them to a neighborhood picnic, and that's where Brian and I first locked eyes. The connection was immediate, like an unspoken understanding between us. A week later, Ryan and I stopped by the dealership where Brian worked to check out an SUV. While Ryan chatted with him about the car, Brian and I exchanged fleeting glances, each one filled with unspoken tension. Then came the moment everything changed. I returned to the dealership a few days later to have mud flaps installed, and Brian asked me into his office. The air was thick with tension as we sat down, and it didn't take long for him to admit he felt something for me and wanted to explore it further. Despite every rational part of me screaming that this was wrong, I got swept up in the thrill of it all. The next morning, I found myself in his arms for the first time. The risk, the danger, it only made the affair more intoxicating. I convinced myself I could juggle both my marriage and the affair. I believed I could have it all. A loving family at home and a secret, thrilling escape on the side. But deep down, I knew the truth. It was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. Over the 5 months, Brian and I were physically involved only 4 times. There was no emotional bond between us. I never loved Brian. My heart belonged to Ryan, always had. But the temptation of something forbidden was impossible to ignore. As a stay-at-home mom, maybe I craved the attention and validation Brian gave me. He was younger, and the flattery fed something in me I didn't even realize I was starving for. I convinced myself I could compartmentalize everything, that my secret wouldn't hurt anyone, and my family would remain untouched. Looking back now, I wish I had the wisdom to stop before it went too far, but fate had other plans. It all fell apart on a Thursday morning. Brian and I were in his bed when Donna's mother burst into the room. The chaos that followed was like something out of a nightmare. She flew into a rage, shouting obscenities, scratching and slapping Brian, and even landing a hard hit to my jaw. In a panic, I scrambled to grab my clothes and get out of there. By the time I made it home, I was a mess, shaking, crying, and overwhelmed by a tidal wave of guilt. The reality of what I'd done hit me like a brick wall. My seemingly perfect marriage was shattered, and there was no undoing it. I spent hours sitting in silence, trying to process the disaster I had created. Eventually, I left Ryan an urgent voicemail, begging him to call me back. But he didn't respond. My panic only grew when I heard pounding on the front door. It was Donna and her mother, screaming for me to come out. I froze, paralyzed by embarrassment and fear. Thankfully, my boys were at school, but the shame I felt was suffocating. When the shouting finally stopped, I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, completely unsure of what to do next. Now, even after all this time, I'm still trying to come to terms with the destruction I caused. Ryan won't even let me touch him anymore, and I can't blame him for that. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Every day, I carry the weight of my choices, trying to figure out a path forward. I've started therapy to work through my issues, hoping it will help me understand why I made such terrible decisions. Most of all, I hope to one day earn back my husband's trust. By sharing my story, I want to shine a light on how devastating infidelity can be, not just for the betrayed partner, but for the one who strayed and the innocent children caught in the middle. If you ever find yourself tempted to make the same mistake, I urge you to stop and think about the damage you could do to yourself and everyone you love. Infidelity isn't just a mistake. It's a crack in the foundation of trust that can take years, even a lifetime, to repair. My hope is that my experience will make others think twice before stepping onto that dangerous path. Later that day, I saw Ryan through the window, walking toward the house. I hurried to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and tried to pull myself together. But when he opened the door, he didn't come inside. Instead, he turned and walked down the street, to Brian and Donna's house. He stayed there for almost 3 hours before finally coming home. When he returned, I tried to hug him, but he pushed me away. I started apologizing, tears streaming down my face, but he cut me off. He said he didn't accept my apology and that he wanted me to leave. I fell to my knees, sobbing, begging him not to throw me out. It's funny how, in these moments, so many women end up on their knees, pleading for forgiveness. It seems like such a common reaction, and now here I was, living it myself. Ryan didn't budge. He called my mom, told her what had happened, and asked her to come pick me up. When she arrived, she apologized to Brian and took me back to her house for the night. I was still crying as we left, but before we did, I asked Ryan what he planned to tell the kids. He said he would handle it. Even in the midst of his pain, he was thinking about how to protect our boys. I admired him for that. They deserve to know the truth, but it has to be explained in a way they can understand. Later, I called Ryan, not expecting him to answer. To my surprise, he did. I convinced myself I could manage both worlds, my marriage and my affair, as if they were separate compartments in my life. I thought I could have everything, indulging in the excitement of a secret relationship while maintaining the stability of my family life. But deep down, I always knew the truth. It was only a matter of time before my actions would catch up with me. The physical aspect of my affair with Brian spanned 5 months and consisted of just 4 encounters. There was no emotional attachment. I never loved Brian. My love for Ryan had never wavered. But the thrill of the forbidden, that allure of stepping outside the boundaries, was intoxicating. As a stay-at-home mom, Maybe I craved the attention Brian gave me. He was younger, charming, and attentive in a way that made me feel noticed. It was validation I didn't even know I was seeking. I truly believed I could keep my family safe from the consequences while sneaking away for this reckless adventure. Looking back, I wish I had had the strength to end it before it spiraled out of control, but fate had other plans for me. It all came crashing down one Thursday morning. Brian and I were in his bed when Donna's mother barged into the room, unannounced. What followed was a scene of pure chaos and humiliation. She erupted in a fury, screaming at the top of her lungs, cursing us both. She lashed out physically, slapping and scratching Brian, and landed a solid hit on my jaw before I could gather my clothes and make my escape. When I finally made it home, I was a wreck. The gravity of what I'd done hit me like a tidal wave of guilt and despair. I sat there, trembling, unable to think clearly, knowing that my once perfect marriage was now irreparably damaged. After hours of sitting in silence, I left Ryan a voicemail, pleading for him to call me back. But when he didn't respond, my anxiety grew worse. My panic turned to terror when I heard loud banging on the front door. It was Donna and her mother, screaming my name, demanding I come out. Embarrassment and fear washed over me, leaving me frozen in place. Thankfully, my boys were at school, but I was utterly consumed by shame. When the shouting eventually stopped, I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, feeling like my world had fallen apart. Fast forward to today, and I'm still grappling with the wreckage I caused. Ryan won't even let me touch him anymore, and I understand why. When trust is shattered, it takes years, sometimes an entire lifetime, to rebuild. I carry the weight of my choices every single day, searching for a way to move forward. I've started therapy, trying to unravel the reasons behind my actions and work on the flaws in myself that led me here. More than anything, I hope to one day regain Ryan's trust. By sharing my story, I want to highlight the devastating impact infidelity has, not just on the betrayed partner, but also on the person who strayed and the innocent children caught in the crossfire. If you're ever tempted to go down this path, please stop and think about the destruction it could bring to your life and the lives of those you love. Infidelity isn't just a mistake. It's a fracture in the very foundation of trust, and it can take years to mend, if it's ever mended at all. My hope is that my experience will serve as a warning to others, making them think twice before choosing a path that can only lead to pain. Later that day, I noticed Ryan outside, walking toward the house. I hurried to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and checked my reflection, trying to look more composed before greeting him. But when he opened the door, he didn't step inside. Instead, I saw him turn and walk down the street toward Brian and Donna's house. He stayed there for almost 3 hours. When he finally returned, I was desperate to make amends. I tried to hug him, but he pushed me away. I started apologizing, tears streaming down my face, but he cut me off, telling me he didn't accept my apology and that he wanted me to leave. I dropped to my knees, crying and begging him to reconsider. It's funny how, in stories like mine, the woman often ends up on her knees, pleading for forgiveness. It's such a common image, and now I was living it. But Ryan was firm. He called my mom, explained what had happened, and asked her to come pick me up. When she arrived, she apologized to Brian and then took me back to her house for the night. I was sobbing as we left, but before we did, I asked Ryan how he planned to explain things to our kids. He said he would handle it. Even in the midst of his pain, he was thinking about protecting our boys. I admired him for that. They deserved the truth, but in a way they could understand. Later that evening, I called Ryan, not expecting him to answer. To my surprise, he did. The women in the neighborhood, the ones I used to call friends, have completely cut me off. They blame me for tearing families apart and want nothing to do with me. More than that, they see me as a threat, keeping their husbands at a distance from me. My home has become a prison. I rarely step outside unless it's to tend to my garden in the backyard while my boys play with their friends, including Marcia and Brian's kids. Thankfully, their lives have remained mostly the same, untouched by the chaos I created. Ryan, on the other hand, seems to have found some solace in his routines. He spends time with his friends in the neighborhood, often hosting them on our back porch. They sit out there, smoking cigars and sipping bourbon. He keeps busy, going to work, hitting the gym, and then coming home to cook for himself. He won't touch anything I make anymore, though I did catch him sneaking a cookie I baked the other day. On weekends, he sticks to grilling for his meals, making it clear he wants no part of my cooking. During the week, I prepare dinner for the boys, and those moments have become a silver lining for me. We usually eat around 4 o'clock after they get home from school. They help set the table, and after we eat, they pitch in to clean up. It's a time I've come to cherish. It brings us closer together and teaches them valuable life skills. But while these small moments of joy exist, many other parts of my life feel unbearable. It feels like you're grappling with the impossible question of whether this marriage with Ryan is salvageable or if it's time to let go. Deep down, you know he's unhappy. It's painfully clear he no longer sees you as his partner, just the co-parent of his children. You love him deeply and regret the pain you've caused. You long for the loving relationship you once shared, but it feels like no matter what you do, he won't let you back in. Megan, the truth is hard to accept, but it's nearly impossible to rebuild trust after it's been shattered like this. No matter how much effort you put in, the trust is gone, and the love Ryan has for you now is different. It's not the same as before. My advice? Divorce. Let each other go and start fresh. It might be the best thing for you, for Ryan, and especially for your children. Not everyone agrees with this perspective, though. One woman suggested that instead of divorcing outright, you should stay married but live apart for a while. She thinks that time and distance could help reignite the feelings you once had for each other. She's hopeful because she believes you and Ryan are well-matched as a couple. Personally, I don't think she's right. To me, it seems like you and Ryan are fundamentally different in ways that can't be bridged. A man chimed in with a harsher view. He believes that if you truly love Ryan, you should let him go and allow him to keep most of what he's worked for. In his opinion, Ryan deserves a chance to heal without you in the picture. He also feels that you're prone to making the same mistake again if you face another tempting situation in the future. I have to say, I agree with him. It seems like you're drawn to a certain type of person, and that makes history likely to repeat itself. Another woman had an interesting take. She thinks your attraction splits into 2 parts. Physically, you're drawn to men like Jacob and Brian, but mentally and emotionally, you value men like Ryan. She believes that as time passes, the qualities of a good man like Ryan will outweigh fleeting physical attraction. She urges you to hold on to him and try to make it work. Finally, there was a man who shared a brutally honest perspective. He said your actions are exactly why he's hesitant to ever get married. He can't understand how someone can stay loyal for years and then betray their partner so suddenly. To him, it's baffling, and it reinforces his fears about commitment. Each opinion highlights a different truth about your situation, but the common thread is that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. Whether you stay together or part ways, the road ahead won't be easy. He mentioned that, despite being around attractive women, he has always stayed faithful to his girlfriend. His commitment struck me. It showed me what loyalty looks like, even when faced with temptation. First update. A few weeks later, I decided to take some of the advice I'd received and moved out to give our marriage the space it needed. I rented an apartment nearby so I could stay close to the kids, though it's been hard not being in the same house with them every day. Leaving our old neighborhood felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It was full of too many painful memories. When I told Ryan about my decision, he seemed caught off guard. For a moment, I thought I saw sadness in his eyes, which gave me hope that he still cares about me. I continue to spend as much time as I can with the kids, and Ryan and I keep in touch regularly. We've had long phone conversations, sometimes just talking about the kids, but other times about life and memories we shared. Those talks have made me believe there's still a part of him that has feelings for me. Ryan seems to be softening, little by little, but the distance has been hard on me. Even so, I feel a glimmer of hope that we might be able to rebuild what was broken. Final update. 5 months later, Ryan made a decision that crushed me. He said we should go through with the divorce. He admitted he still has feelings for me, but he explained that staying married to me made it impossible for him to heal. He said something I hadn't expected, that he might be open to rekindling our relationship someday. but not as long as we're legally married. For him, staying married is a constant reminder of the betrayal and disrespect he felt, a wound that hasn't been able to close. Ryan explained that the marriage itself had become symbolic of his pain, of the embarrassment, the feelings of being devalued, and the loss of trust. He believes that divorce might be the only way for him to truly move past those emotions. According to him, being tied to me through marriage keeps those feelings alive, no matter how much he might want to let them go. Hearing that was heartbreaking, but I understand where he's coming from. I can't undo the hurt I caused, but I hope that, in time, we'll find a way forward. Whether that's as friends, co-parents, or maybe, one day, as partners again.